What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Savage Rounds. This is episode 14. You got Xavier here, and then Dobie's not going to be here for this episode, so I went out and found a good friend on Twitter of mine, a guy that's uh, up and coming in the MMA journalism space and has a lot of knowledge on betting and MMA in general. My man Ludus Charta MMA on Twitter, if you wanted to follow him. Go ahead and say what's up.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thank you for having me on this podcast. I'm very excited. And yeah, before we get into this, I just want to say a lot of the time when we talk about angles or situations when placing a wager, I'll refer to like a unit bet or like a position. So that is essentially just in the easiest way to describe it is it's a confidence bet. So a unit is like a certain percentage of your bankroll. So hypothetically, if we give out like somebody to knock somebody out um, at plus 1600 for, let's just say, a very small percentage of your bankroll. If you're $100 better, that's like it could be a $2.50 bet. It could be a $5 bet. Just this is obviously a long term plan, and we want to encourage responsible gambling. So when I talk about stuff like that, it's just a reference guide on what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and you always. This is actually so. Before we get into it for real, I have two things I wanted to say. We recorded this yesterday, and you bring up a bunch of good points about unit betting and being smart with your bankroll and being in it for the long term, that kind of stuff. So you bring up a lot of good points there, and I did just want to say thank you because we had a little audio file corruption, and you offered to re-record this, so I just wanted to say thank you for that. And then, secondly, you offered up to do a giveaway for us. You've got some pretty cool cards, a nice little Stipe Miocic auto and an Amanda Nunes relic card, and that'll go to the first place winner. We're gonna do a little giveaway on Twitter. We'll post up the card. Everybody's gonna make their picks. You post your picks back under. Whoever gets the most right will win that group of cards. Unless there's a tiebreaker, then it'll just be a randomizer, and whoever gets randomized wins. And then on my side, I'm also going to put up two cards, and those will go to second place. It's going to be a Justin. I don't have it on me, so I can't show it to the camera, but it'll be on Twitter after this. It's a Justin Gaethje 9.5 graded Red Disco Select, and then a Jiri Prochka rookie. Or I might end up switching the Jiri with a Kamzat rookie. I'll see which one I end up liking better. But the final two cards will be up on Twitter. But
I
yeah,
might have that Justin. What is the 9.5 out of SGC?
yeah.
Ooh,
I'll
yeah,
send you. I'll send you a picture after.
cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I got it a little bit back. But yeah, let's
And
get in. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no problem on hopping back in, dude. I mean, stuff happens, and you know, I think it's vital that proper information, and then we also get to sharpen what we went over yesterday. So
Yeah.
I think it'll work out better. It's no big deal, dude. Let's grind this out, and thank you for everybody for listening. I hope you guys learned something, and we can do this in the future. So
Hell
let's
yeah.
get in.
Let's do it. So this week we've got UFC Fight Night, Song Yadong versus Ricky Simone. We kind of talked about it yesterday. It's more a sneaky good card. You said not one for the casuals, not super many well-known fighters, but whenever cards like these come around, there tend to be some banger fights. But yeah,
Oh
let's
yeah,
get into it.
definitely though. I found out that I cover every fight from start to finish on my Twitter. So that's like live scoring, just updates, and I always use the tag of whatever fight it is. So for this weekend, it's hashtag UFC Vegas 72. So if you just type that in, you'll see me throughout the night. And then if you want to go back to any event, you can check that too because everything is in the Twitter space. So I found out that these cards are normally bangers. At the end of the day, these are warriors that are fighting, and just because they don't get the notoriety in the name doesn't mean that we're not going to get some excitement. So I'm expecting some really good fights, even with all the chaos with matchups and fallouts so far.
Yeah, because we recorded yesterday and there was one matchup. By the time we were done recording, the whole matchup had changed. But we'll get into that because it's one of the early fights. Um, Kicking off the night, though, we've got a women's bantamweight fight. Haley Cowan, Jamie Lynn Horth. Haley Cowan, 7-2, 5'8", 67-inch reach, 31 years old, 4-1 in her last five, with a win on Contender Series. That was her last fight. She had a split decision win versus Claudia Leite. And then on the other side, Jamie Lynn Horth, 5-0, 5'7", 67-inch reach, 33 years old. Last five, 5-0s. That's her whole record. And that last fight was a round 3 submission win versus Myra Cantoaria for the LFA belt back in 2021. It was in December. I started off on the Cowan side when deciding my thoughts on this fight, but as I watched tape, it kind of switched. I think Cowan can have success early with her size and that clinch work she does, pushing you up against the cage, throwing knees to the body, to the inside of the thighs. She's got some decent slicing elbows in the clinch. She cut open Claudia Leite in that Contender Series fight in the first round, and the cut was bothering her for the whole fight. And I just think she tends to slow down. I won't say gas out because she's still there fighting, but she tends to slow down as the rounds go on, especially in the third round. In that Contender Series fight, you saw it. She had pretty dominant position on top and got reversed and was on the bottom. That's why it ended up being a split decision. Jamie Lynn Horth, I believe on the feet, she'll have the advantage here. Haley Cowan can land, but Jamie Lynn Horth with the Thai boxing, I think she'll have the advantage there. And she's competent enough on the ground where if it goes there and Cowan's starting to tire, I think she can do enough to stay in position or even find submissions, because Haley Cowan tends to be a little positionally unaware and she can get herself in submission trouble. So I tend to favor Jamie Lynn Horth the longer this fight goes, and that'll be my pick for this one. What are you thinking for this one?
Yeah, I mean those are all solid points. When you have these new debuts, especially for the women coming off the Contender Series, UFC debut for Haley Cowan. Jamie Lynn Horth coming from another organization. Her last fight, December 15th, 2021. I think it's just one of those situations where the UFC views it as, all right, and I view this from a line perspective too. So Horth sitting at minus 140, that just tells me that they're kind of throwing two people out there, and whatever happens happens in their eyes. You know, each fighter has their own unique stance here, and it's literally a toss up. So I mean, no value, no lean, in my opinion, and I think it's going to be a really good fight.
Yeah, I agree there. Betting wise, I personally will be staying away, just because it is, like you said, it's two girls coming in making their debut. The UFC wants to see who they can continue to push forward up the ladder, and there's questions to be asked on both sides, which will be answered. So I think this is one where you learn about each fighter and come back and see if there's a good line next time they come around.
Can I add something real quick?
Yeah, yeah,
We
go ahead.
talked last time before the audio failed, so we're redoing this. So I'm looking at my sheet, and then for every UFC event, I write down the fights and the odds, normally in the beginning of the week, and then I'll update the odds so I kind of see the odd movement. But then I leave some space, and then when I'm watching the fight, I can write down notes about the fighters and stuff they do and stuff that I personally see. So that way, I can go back and look at it. So that's a pro tip. I suggest that if you're passionate about this and you want to make it a long term thing, that's something you should do. I'm a visual learner, so I like seeing it, and then while I'm watching it, writing down notes.
Yeah, I do the same. I have a notebook here as well that I use for notes and lines and stuff. It's just good to go back and look at stuff that you may not see watching tape, thoughts you had at the time while watching the fight. Just good to have notes on that. But yeah, next fight is actually the one that we were talking about that got switched around. We've got a catchweight prelim at 140 pounds. Marcus McGee stepping in on short notice to fight Journey Newsome. Brian Kelleher pulled out. I'm not sure. I didn't see a reasoning. Did you happen to?
I didn't see any reasoning, but like I said before, since he's not on and we're not going to be talking about him, I'm personally not a fan of Brian. When he was on the same card where um, Umar fought, he was fanboying for Khabib's auto, ended up losing that fight. So yeah, Brian's an auto fade for me, but he's out, so we don't got to worry about him this week. We got an interesting matchup because the dogs coming in at what plus 235 on short notice. I mean, it should be a little bit higher in my opinion, but let's get the tail of the tape.
Yeah, Marcus McGee coming in 6-1, 5'8", 70-inch reach, 32 years old, 4-1 in his last five. His last fight was a round two KO TKO win versus Luciano Ramos. It was in January of this year, so he has fought pretty recently. Journey Newsom on the other side, 10-4, 5'5", 67.5-inch reach, 34 years old. He has won 3-1 in his last five, and he got a unanimous decision loss versus Sergey Morozov in his last fight, which was at the end of the year. So they fought kind of a similar time frame. This I can't lie here and say I know too much about Marcus McGee. I've seen just because this was so kind of last minute. I've seen one of his fights and a few clips and stuff of him just because I know he's a sparring partner of Sean O'Malley and all those guys that come through at the lab in Arizona and go to Tim Welch's gym and stuff. So there's a pretty good circulation of fighters that he's training with. Um, and then Journey Newsom on the other side, he's got decent hands. He throws kicks. Not bad power for the weight class. Um, I I find it hard to pick a winner here just because Marcus McGee, I haven't really seen him fight at a high level yet, so this will kind of be his coming out party if he can prove himself. I like the skill set he's shown. Pretty good hands, mixes in the wrestling. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he does in the UFC on short notice, trying to make a name for himself. Did you have any thoughts on this one?
With you saying that Marcus is coming out of a Tim Welch camp, training with the fighters like Sean O'Malley in that camp, they are very experienced. They have a great system, and I want to shout out Sean O'Malley and Tim Welch because they have a system where between rounds and corners, they have multiple coaches, right? So they have a striking coach, they have a grappling coach. They have one guy that's allowed to talk to Sean. So if the striking or grappling coach has something to say, they tell the main guy.
Yeah, they go to Tim, right?
Yep. So you don't have everybody interacting with you and kind of confusing you, and you keep your mind on the prize. So it's small steps like that for teams and coaches and discipline that just adds more value. So even though he's coming in on short notice and he is the dog, um, I'm going to actually play this personally as a small position.
I will
Um,
be as well. I like that a
just
lot.
just because it's so important, like the camp and the team you have behind you. And I think you're going to see him come out very strong. And yeah, Journey Newsom just doesn't sell it for me. So yeah, for the value, no way to pass this up. You got to take a little shot at it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Especially an unknown at this level, but a guy who we've seen has solid skills, like you said, coming out of a nice camp with good training partners, good coaches around him. And Journey Newsom, who we've seen in the UFC, pretty sporadic, inconsistent, and I don't know. It's a solid fight for Marcus McGee to come in and be able to show his skills. But yeah, I really like the small unit play on a pretty big dog coming in. Let's get into the next one. And I forgot to say it when we started. Three of the four women are making their UFC debut this weekend. This
Yeah,
is
no,
this is the only one that's not. Stephanie Egger. She's fighting Irina Alexieva. Egger is 8-3, 5'6", 68-inch reach, 34 years old, 3-2 in her last five, and her last fight was a round two submission win versus Eileen Perez in September of last year. And then Irina Alexieva, 4-1, 5'8", 66-inch reach, 32 years old. 4-1 is her entire record, so that's her last five. And her last fight was a unanimous decision win versus Stephanie Page over in Bellator, and that was October of 2021. So it's been a little bit since she's fought. Um, she calls herself the Russian Ronda. She's got one armbar on her record. Ronda Rousey has more arm bars than she has fights, so I thought that was a little interesting, a little odd from her. Uh, Probably trying to put hype behind herself, make people check it out because of the name. But personally, uh, I won't be betting on this fight. I think Egger should walk over her. Watching Irina Alexieva, I haven't been impressed. I don't think she's very good. The girl she fought in in Bellator, Stephanie Page, I didn't think she was great either, and she was able to get some licks off on Alexiva. She was just a much bigger woman, and she missed weight, so she was kind of weight bullying her. Um, she's okay on the ground. Her striking is super long, and she leaves her head out there. But the thing is, like I say, Stephanie should dog walk her. It's hard to trust Stephanie Egger, and that's why I'll be staying away from this one. With an unknown like Alexiva coming in versus a fighter who we've seen in Egger who can look great and submit people quick, or look awful and not get anything done. It's a weird one for me, so I'll be staying away. Pick wise, I'm going Egger though. I think she should be able to get this done. How are you feeling here?
Yeah. So Edgar came in as a dog when she got that submission victory. So it's kind of weird at 34 years of age this year as a minus 305 favorite. And the thing that pops out to me the most is normally when you have women's fights over and under 2.5 rounds, it's pretty juiced on the over. So you normally get like a minus 340 or minus 280. You get something really high like that. On this one, it's only minus 150 juice. This was FanDuel's lines when I looked. Or yeah, FanDuel's lines, and then the under 2.5 rounds is plus 120, and that's very rare for the women's division. So that kind of stuck out to me, and that is a play I'm going to really look into. It wouldn't be a big play for me, but it would be a little bit more on like the 1 unit play, rather than like a small position on a dog. Now, 1 unit play is kind of small in general, but it's a little bit it's a small upgrade from taking a small position on a dog, so it's like the next stage from that. So that's what I'm going to be looking at this fight. But yeah, if I had to pick, probably Stephanie Egger by submission.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot we talked about that yesterday, and that was something we both came up with on our own. Just looking at this fight, seeing the under 2.5 at such uh, close odds, I guess. Close money
And
odds, plus 128. You don't normally see that, like you said. That's normally a much higher number. So seeing that, the bookies think there's a chance. We both saw that. It could be a good spot to take. I'm glad you brought that back up. I forgot.
and, and it actually cashed last week. The Brazilian Gilbert Burns.
Denise.
Yeah, she got the fight done, and right, didn't she get the finish?
She did, yeah.
Yeah, so she got the finish, and that was one of the over and unders that I was looking at, where it was like really, really a low one. So,
Yeah,
you
I,
know,
I almost played that. I should have. I ended up just playing Denise, but the under was probably a smart play as well. I should have taken both. Um,
and and if you're looking at this fight from an angle perspective, right? Stephanie Egger, realistically, you're gonna bet $305 to win 100.
there's a 0% chance.
So you're not going to risk that. This is all about risk management, right? And it's all about numbers at the end of the day. And under 2.5 at plus 120 with the lower risk, it's just a smarter play if you're going to look at angle in it. That way, if um Alexieva comes out and she just knocks her out or gets a submission herself, you're not kicking yourself in the foot for laying the juice on somebody who's 34 years old, and probably that line is just getting juiced up because of her last performance. So
Yeah. And then just kind of a side note, I saw this fight yesterday get made, and I love it. I'm really excited just because you brought up Denise Gomez. It reminded me it's Denise Gomez versus Yasmin Jauregui. That's going to be a banger in that division. I'm really excited for that.
yeah, I saw that. I almost commented on it and tagged Gilbert Burns, joking like, "Hey, dude, have
Two fights? That's funny.
just he's been so active, and I asked if he was related to her after the last fight, and it looks so like it's crazy.
Yeah, that's funny. Moving on up the card, we've got a flyweight bout. Cody Durden, Charles Johnson. Durden is 14-4-1, 5'7", 67-inch reach, 32 years old, 3-2 in his last five. In his last fight was a unanimous decision win versus Carlos Mata. Charles Johnson, 13-4, 5'9", 70-inch reach, 32 years old. He's 3-2 in his last five and 2-2 in the UFC. His last fight was a split decision loss versus Ode Osborne in February of this year, the end of February, the 25th. So it really hasn't been that long since he's fought. He's been pretty active recently. I like. I think this is going to be a pretty fun fight. Charles Johnson, to me, feels like I won't say the better mixed martial artist because I don't know if his ground game is quite up to par. I think it's decent, but he's shown he can be taken down and stuff. But on the feet, I believe Charles Johnson here will be the better striker. But he is far too inactive and cautious for me, especially as of late. And I think Cody Durden can take pretty big advantage of that. He's a guy who's pretty active on the feet, and he uses those. Well, first I'll say he's got pretty decent power on the feet as well. He throws the overhand, and he's hurt people in his last two fights. One of them was JP Bai, so I don't know if that really counts, but he did hurt him. And I think he uses those overhands to try and hurt Charles and get in close to use that wrestling. I think the forward pressure he has mixing in the wrestling at an underdog spot. I like Cody Durden here. What are you thinking?
No, I totally agree with you. When I looked at this fight, you got Cody Durden. His losses came against Mokaev, Timmy Flick, and Chris Gutierrez. So he's fighting higher competition. So those are respectable losses. And Charles Johnson, in my notes looking back, he's a bit sporadic. You can't trust him. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday where I think it's important to look into the socials of some of these guys because you can kind of see where their mindset is. And Charles Johnson, all week I've seen he's been trying to, interact in a weird way, trying to get reactions out of Cody. They're going back and forth on social media. Um, for me, those things matter a little bit. And, just looking at the level of competition and then, not being able to trust Charles because he's all over the place. Cody Durden's a very good spot here. I actually like him. It's a pretty even fight on paper with the odds. So, I like his spot here.
Yeah, I agree. I wish I could have gotten in a bit earlier. I didn't start taping this fight until a little bit later in the week. But if you were smart and taped this early, you could have gotten in early, and you could add Durden at plus 170. That was the opening line. I saw a few people get in there, and that was a really good spot to get in at, considering the line's much closer now, more around the 130, 120-ish area. Uh, Moving on up, though, we've got a heavyweight fight: Martin Budai, Jake Collier. Budai is 11-1, 6'4", 77-inch reach, 31 years old, 5-0 in his last five with a win on Contender Series and 2-0 in the UFC. His last fight was a split decision win versus Lucas Brzeski. On the Collier side, he is 13-8, 6'3", 78.5-inch reach, 34 years old, 2-3 in his last five, and his last fight was a round 2 KO TKO loss versus Chris Barnett. When we talked about this one yesterday, you made a good point here, and I'll kind of let you speak a little bit more about it, but you brought up, just like looking at this fight, you'd assume Budai would be a much bigger favorite, so the line should probably scare you a little bit, but just like from taking out betting just as like a skill for skill kind of matchup, I think Collier will be the better striker on the feet. I think he'll be quicker and he'll be able to move forward. He's pretty, I won't say explosive, but he's pretty active in the first round. He likes to do a lot. Um, and Budai, he walks forward, he plots forward with his hands in one spot, and he throws pretty big overhands, and he's got good power for the weight class. Not a lot of output, not very quick, but he loves to push people up against the fence and make them work. And with how Collier was getting tired, or how quick he got tired versus Chris Barnett, it does scare me a little bit on the Collier side. I do think Budai can kind of weather that early storm from Collier when Collier's moving forward, throwing those punches. I think Budai can kind of drop his head, throw an overhand, push forward, push back, and use that clinch work. Try and drag him down. If you can't get him down, just keep working him up against the fence. Get Collier tired, and I think over 3 rounds, Budai can get this win.
Yeah, interesting line. 2.5 juiced on the over minus 135. I wrote down weird line on Jay Collier. When you got 11-1 guy and Martin Budai coming in, and he's not a bigger favorite, that should be a worry sign. And at the end of the day, there's always value everywhere, but these two guys with the line and with their styles, it's just a red flag. It's something that you stay away from. In my opinion, it's not even worth like it's worth watching, but anything is possible. Literally anything.
Yeah.
It could be a knockout. You could get knocked out in 10 seconds. It could go 3 rounds in a boring slugfest. Once they get tired, they could, laying each other on the ground once somebody gets tired. The line is just too off for me, and that's an indication to stay away. So, you know, you
Yeah.
always go with your think at times too. Try not to overthink it. I wrote down weird lines, so there's no need to force anything in this specific one.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. It's easy sometimes to just who you think should win and bet on them without taking into other factors. And the Budai one, with the line being this close and what you'd assume the line would be, you're right. It's a little weird. And even that last fight versus Brzeski, a lot of people thought Brzeski should have won. It's just the style Budai fights in. It bodes for close fights, close decisions. So if he can't get the finish, the decision is always going to be a little sketchy. But just pick wise, I'll edge it to Budai slightly because of the way Collier looked in his last fight. But yeah, I agree. Betting wise, I will most likely be staying away from this one.
Yeah, and people should remember that pick wise and betting wise are a totally different thing. It's easier to pick, when you're putting
Yeah.
your money up. You think about it, and pick wise, I'll go Budai if I'm gonna pick one. Line wise, if I was forced to bet, I'd bet Collier. So it's just one of those weird situations. But there is a difference at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's smart to take in all those factors for each decision. Um, Next up, we open up the main card. We've got a welterweight bout. Josh Quinlan, Trey Waters. I'm excited for this one. Uh, this could be a quick knockout. This could be a long striking fight. I'm excited. Two guys who are in here to show what they've got, make a name for themselves. Quinlan is 6-0, 6 feet tall, 72-inch reach, 30 years old, 5-0 in his last five with a no contest on Contender Series because he popped for a substance. And he's 1-0 in the UFC. His last fight was that UFC fight. He got a round one KO TKO versus Jason Witt in August of last year. Trey Waters on the other side, 7-1, 6'5", 77-inch reach, 28 years old, 4-1 in his last five, and that loss was on Contender Series to one of the Bonfim brothers. But his last fight was a round two KO TKO win versus Jalen Fuller for the LFA belt, and this was quite literally just about 2 weeks ago. So he's still pretty fresh. This is a weird fight. Again, to kind of judge. We talked about this yesterday. Both guys have knockout capabilities in different fashions. Quinlan is a guy with ridiculous power. He'll move forward, eat some to give some, and he just throws bombs. You can hear him. He yells with every punch he throws. He's putting everything into every punch he throws. Got really heavy leg kicks. And on the Trey Waters side, it's just a different style of knockout. He's really long, and it's the speed and timing. The knockout versus Jalen Fuller was crazy. He got like jumped in on by Jalen Fuller with a close punch, and he kind of just leaned out of range, and it looked like he tapped him on the side of the head with that right hand, but it put him out cold, stiff. It was kind of crazy. My only gripe with this fight, I guess, is it's hard to judge because you've got two guys who are pretty hittable. Trey Waters, in my opinion, was losing his last two fights that he's won until he wasn't, and that's the scary part. He's a guy who's not super active on the feet. He's looking to counter strike, and he wants that knockout. So he's willing to kind of sit back and lose on points to find that knockout. And Quinlan is a guy who's going to push forward the whole time trying to find that knockout. So it's kind of a perfect storm for both guys in a way. Quinlan wants a guy who's going to lean out of range and not throw a lot so he can try and find that knockout. But Trey Waters wants a dude that's going to walk forward and throw on him so he can find that slick knockout with one punch. I edge Quinlan because of how Trey Waters defends. Like I said, leans out of range, hands by his hips, and it's a lot of moving backwards, so that scares me. I will pick Quinlan, but don't be surprised if Trey Water one punch knocks this man out, considering I've seen Quinlan get hurt by much lesser competition. How do you feel for this one?
I had a long day yesterday at work. I wasn't able to double backtrack on this line with the over and under. What's the over and under at?
Let's see. Hold up, I can pull it up real quick.
So while you're pulling that up, I'll just go ahead and get into it. When this opened up, as a replacement fight. The public opinion, I saw a lot of people uh, were on Quinlan. And when I saw the line, I just wrote down Quinlan versus Trey Waters. I looked at their stats. I looked at who they fought. And I put a check mark next to Trey Waters. So see him opening up as a short dog. It makes me like him from a value standpoint. Um, and Quinlan isn't a guy. I mean, like you said, Waters has two fights. He also has a 5-inch reach advantage, and he's tough. So
Mm-hmm.
he has that dog in him, and he's looking for that knockout. Plus, he has a reach advantage. So we differ here, but I mean, yeah, like you said, this is one where I liked your points that Quinlan's going to go forward, and Trey Waters has the knockout potential, so he's going to force him to be uncomfortable. So there's a lot of unknowns. So if we can get, so I mean, what did you happen to pull up the over and under on that one?
I did. So the typical one that you'll see in every book is going to be the 1.5. Under is -130, over is +100. It looks like just on fight odds, a couple books, which will be hard to find, have the 2.5, but it's like over +200, under -275. But the
Yeah,
one
no.
and a half is the typical one.
So your write up is spot on in your analysis of the fight, because if they're giving it out 1.5, 1.5 is already, an indication that they think it's going to be an early fight, and it's already juiced at -130. So I think you just gave me a 1 unit play, which is a small portion of my bankroll, but 1 unit on under 1.5 -130. That's a position with these two guys. I like it.
Yeah, I agree. If, like I said, with the line, I don't mind taking a shot at Trey Waters at all if in your eyes you favor him, because at +155 with the knockout potential he has, that's a pretty good play as well, value wise. And then I like that under 1.5 a lot because, yeah, both guys, big knockout potential. I have a hard time seeing this one getting out of the second round, to be honest.
Well, and as we're talking about this, so if I want to, so there's multiple angles you can take in any fight, right? So for me, it's Trey Waters on the money line for a small position of value, because I'm not going to bet Quinlan. So it's Trey Waters or nothing, and then you get a pretty decent value play in a unit for under 1.5 once you talk it out and you realize the styles of these guys. So there's multiple angles you can take on every fight, and you know at the end of the day, when I make my final card, I probably wouldn't not bet Trey Waters, or if I did, it would be really, really small, like a prop bet unit play, just to, throw a little bit of action on it for the value. But like I said, he was a smaller dog. I expected him to be a little bit a bigger dog, the way people were talking. So that just it indicates me that if I had to pick a side, I would pick Trey Waters, but it's not worth putting my money on, and I like going with violence on this one, under 1.5.
Yeah, I agree. That is the spot for this one. Next up on the main card, we've got Marcos Rogerio de Lima versus Waldo Cortez Acosta. De Lima's 20. I said this yesterday too. I'll say this a different way because he's got a draw. He's got 20 wins, 9 losses, and a draw. 6'1", 75-inch reach, 37 years old, 3-2 in his last 5. His last fight was a round 1 submission win versus Andrei Arlovsky. On the Cortez Acosta side, he is 9-0, 6'4", 78-inch reach, 31 years old, 5-0 in his last 5. He's undefeated with a Contender Series win and 2 wins in the UFC. His last fight was a unanimous decision win versus Chase Sherman. This is one when we talked about yesterday. I was probably going to put a little spot on De Lima, maybe in like a little 2-leg parlay with something else I liked, just because of the reads I made with like Acosta getting his leg kick or getting his legs eaten up in both his UFC fights, the grappling advantage for De Lima. When we talked about this yesterday, though, I think you made some pretty good points. We've watched De Lima fight before, and it's easy to look on paper and see what he does well. But if you watch him fight, it's super I guess volatile. Like you don't know what he's gonna do. He could go out and throw bombs, or he could go out and fight smart. It's kind of hard to read. And the bigger man in Cortez Acosta, really good boxing, likes to put the guy on the back foot. I think this is pick wise. I'm going to Lima. If you are gonna bet though, the bet would probably be on Cortez Acosta.
Yeah, no, similar opinions on this one, and the stance that I took on was like, with these big heavyweights, and we even talked about this with Boudet and Collier, but like William Knight, when he was the big favorite and he comes out and he absolutely puts on a shit show and doesn't do anything, doesn't even try to go forward. Sometimes you just don't know who's gonna show up. I don't really trust the older heavyweights. So, laying somebody that high minus 180, I just don't think it's worth ruining your parlay, ruining your night, making you chase. Because not everybody is disciplined. Not everybody closes their app before they have all their bets in. And, that's a triggering factor to some people. I mean, I would if I had a guy, and I didn't really look at it. And, I bet him just because he was a favorite in a heavyweight, and then he gets knocked out. It's not worth ruining your night over. And,
Yeah.
it's one that they could end up it's the over and under is 1.5 juiced on the over minus 145. So if it goes past a round, then you might see them get tired and it might be a snooze fest. um but yeah, I mean, if I'm picking, I'm picking Costa, like on a pick and a bet, but it's something that I'm not looking to play.
Yeah, and then like the point about yesterday that I liked, and you bring up William Knight because we talked about that yesterday too. There was a path to victory for him, and you're right. The old heavyweights sometimes they just don't do it, and he just didn't do anything. And on paper, I like what DeLima has, but it's you're right. It's hard to trust him with your money at that price. So after talking, and I thank you for it. I will most likely be staying away from this one now. Um, Moving on, this is probably my strongest opinion on the card, and I said it yesterday when we recorded, and I'll say it again here. I'm either gonna look stupid or smart, um, or really stupid or really smart. But we've got Julian Erosa, Fernando Padilla. Erosa is 28 and 11, 6'1", 74.5-inch reach, 33 years old, 3-2 in his last five. His last fight was a round one KO TKO loss versus Alex Caceres, and that was December of last year, so not too long ago. Padilla on the other side, 14 and 4, 6'1", 76-inch reach, 26 years old, 4-1 in his last five. His last fight was a round two KO TKO win versus Cameron Graves for the Fury belt, or the Fury FC belt, but that was back in early 2021. So it's been a little bit of a layoff for him. Why I say I'm going to either look really smart or really stupid, I don't rate Fernando Padilla at all, to be honest, watching tape. I didn't like how he strikes. It looks pretty slow to me. It's the same punches. He walks forward. His head doesn't move off the center line. He doesn't even lean out of range. He just eats the shots and moves forward. With Erosa, I feel like that's a little bit dangerous with a dude who's willing to scrap. Obviously, Padilla is too. He was all his fights. He was definitely a dog. He was willing to put his head down and throw shots and eat shots. But I feel like that scares me against a more seasoned guy, somebody who has fought a much higher level of competition. His last fight was against Alex Caceres, and I feel Erosa will have a pretty decent grappling advantage here. I really like Erosa in this spot personally. I don't rate Fernando Padilla, but I am totally willing to eat my words and be proven wrong if Padilla comes out and has a great performance. But just at the moment, I'm on the Erosa side here. I like it a lot. How are you feeling?
For me, it's a low line. I'm a big fan of what Mexico is presenting in terms of these fighters. So they're about to open up their own personal performance institute in Mexico pretty soon. I think there's a lot of hype behind some of these fighters, and not even looking at it from, I'm looking at this one from a line perspective. It's a little bit low, and I understand Rosa is a very dangerous fighter. So it kind of counteracts my opinion on the line because Rosa is the guy who can knock somebody out really quick. So this is one where I'm going to watch and find out. But as you were talking about it, saying that they're not afraid to throw, and I'm looking at the lines and 2.5 on the rounds minus 160. I think I'm going to throw half a unit on it. So it's nothing crazy. It's a juice play, but it's a low unit bet, and yeah, I'm gonna enjoy it and just kind of watch and see if Padilla can do something here.
Ah,
But if I had to pick, I would go with Rosa as a pick.
yeah, no,
Um, yeah, so that's my opinion on this one. But I'm excited to see what this kid Padilla has to bring, or Padilla, sorry.
I totally agree. Betting wise, I feel like violence is a pretty good spot here, just considering the style they both fight in. It's both like kill or be killed. They move forward, throwing bombs, not the best of defense. So yeah, I like a violence spot here. Um, Moving on up the card, middleweight, we've got Cody Brundage, Rodolfo Vieira. Brundage is 8-3, 6 feet tall, 72-inch reach, 28 years old, 3-2 in his last five, 2-2 in the UFC within those five. His last fight was a round one KO TKO loss versus Mikhail Oleszczuk, who fights later on this card. Um, on the Vieira side, 8-2, 6 feet tall, 73-inch reach, 33 years old, 3-2 in his last five. His last fight was a unanimous decision loss versus Chris Curtis. Um, this was a fight I before kind of going through watching tape, looking at notes I've written on these guys. I just off the top thought I liked the Brundage line. Right now it's sitting at around plus 195, depending on which book you're looking at. But I think this is a spot, after watching tape, Vieira is just a better fighter. In the first round, I think he'll be able to take advantage of Brundage being a little wild moving forward, pop his jab, and get this fight to the ground at some point, whether it's Brundage who tries to wrestle and bring it there, or I do think Vieira will be able to shoot his own takedowns and get this fight to the ground. I favor a first round finish for Vieira here. I don't think I will put a straight bet on him just because outside of the first round, Vieira scares me. So I will look into the under. I'm not. Let's see what the under is actually right now.
It's F minus one. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. 1.5. So yeah, you're spot on with your
Minus
yeah.
115. Yeah.
So that's an angle. Like if you're looking, if you think if you share the same opinion, that Vieira is going to win first round knockout, are you going to lay minus 240, or are you going to go with 1.5 minus 115, and then you also have both guys?
Yeah.
So that's just a stance as an angle to look at. Personally, for me on this one, I think there is value with Cody Brundage as a dog. I think it's too high. It hasn't really moved too much. The line is pretty stagnant. But yeah, violence is probably the likely scenario in this one as well. And it's one from a gambling perspective that I'm personally going to stay away from. But yeah, there's just too many unknowns. If I had to pick, it would be Cody Brundage. And then gambling, I'm just going to stay away from this one. But, if you're somebody who likes Vieira by first round knockout, I mean, you can even bet that as a prop, or you can just take the minus 115 under 1.5. Root for both.
I think the only play I'll be making on this, just because of how Vieira scares me outside of the first round, I wrote these down yesterday, just because I thought the lines were kind of crazy, just considering how they fight. I'm going to be placing small bets on each of these. Brundage round 2 at plus 1,000, Brundage round 3 at plus 16,000. I think outside of the first round, if Brundage survives the first round, he's probably going to be super dangerous with how tired Vieira is. And I personally, I like those two spots a lot.
That's actually a really good analytic take on it, because, usually those odds are a little bit higher. That round 2 plus 1,000 for a dog that's already plus almost 200. Normally the round 2 odds would be a little bit more. So that's books taking into account that Vieira doesn't really do well if he gets past the first round, or that he's a liability. So even though it's like high odds, they should be higher. So your analysis is spot on and aligns with that. And yeah, I mean, that's like if you're $100 better, it's like a $5 bet if you decide to go that route.
Exactly. Yeah. You said it perfectly. It won't be big spots on either of them. Yeah, small bets on each of them, just to kind of cover those spots, because it is definitely a possibility. Uh, Moving on up, we've got the co-main event here. I fixed the pictures from yesterday because I had the wrong pictures up. But we've got Caio Borralho versus Mikhail Oleszczuk. Borralho's 13-1, 5'10", 75-inch reach, 30 years old, 5-0 in his last five. His last fight was a unanimous decision win versus Mahmoud Muradov. That was in October of last year. And then on the Olszewski side, he is 18-5, 6 feet tall, 74-inch reach, 28 years old, 4-1 in his last five. And his last fight was a round one KO TKO win versus Cody Brundage, who we just talked about. That was in December of last year. This was one I personally really do think Baralio's going to win. And I feel like at first I thought Kyle Baralio's the guy you want to throw in your parlays. But we talked about this a little bit yesterday, and you brought up a lot of good points. I was kind of just discounting the knockout prowess Olszewski has. You said it yesterday, 13 knockouts and 18 wins. With how both of these guys fight, I feel violence is the play here. You convinced me of that yesterday.
Yeah, most definitely. Borrelio, he hasn't lost since July 18, 2015. So it's been 9 years since he lost. However, you got Michael Jasek coming in. Pretty big dog, but 13 knockouts. He's coming off a knockout victory. You said, is Borrelio gonna, get on his back and kind of ride him? I think this is a great opportunity for Michael, and he knows it. So he's gonna come in and he's gonna, if he gets into one of those positions with grappling, he's either gonna, come in with the game plan and kind of having worked on, escaping that, and then he might go too hard and Borrelio might get a sub, or Michael's gonna come out and knock him out. So violence is definitely the play here, and I like the under on this one a lot.
Yeah, no, I was really glad we talked about that yesterday because I do still think Baralio will most likely win this, and I do like the submission or like the ground and pound TKO kind of deal. But you're right. I was totally just kind of breezing past the fact that Olszewski has 13 knockouts. It is super dangerous because of how wild and powerful he is. So it's definitely not out of the question. Violence
And
is the spot.
it's worth noting that sports books, they will throw out these big lines, maybe a little bit bigger than they should be, only because they know that if they put it where the line should actually be, that they're going to be slaughtered with Borrelia action, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes they take these stances, and these guys are sharp. They want 50-50 action at the end of the day. And I think it's a bit high. So that's the only. I mean, if he's sitting at minus like 240, minus 210, I feel like that's a more appropriate line. And then I would say, let's go with them. But at minus 360 or wherever he's around right now, it's just too high for me.
I agree. Anything over minus 350, I wouldn't bet him above minus 300 to be honest, but over 350, close to 400, it seems kind of crazy, especially just with how they both fight.
And anything can happen. I mean, you told me the other day, or you told me yesterday, we were talking about it, that you lost on uh
Valentina.
I mean, is it really worth ruining your parlay for minus 700? You're not really gaining much throwing it in there. And those fights to me, it's like I had a buddy and he would bet 1,000 to win 100 every time Ronda Rousey fought, and free money, and then he got hit and he lost 1,000, so he won like 700, but that 1,000 that he's down 300 overall on his Ronda Rousey betting days. But you're gonna get caught eventually in this game. It's just like not everybody's gonna come out, and that's why when I take a stance on fading Bo Nickel, do I think Bo Nickel is great and going to be a champion? Yes. But at the end of the day, it only takes one punch. We haven't seen his chin get tested yet. And it's not like I'm betting a huge wager on the guys that he's going to be facing. I'm throwing out $10 on first and second round knockouts for these guys. That's it, and I'm more watching it to see how Bo Nickel responds to adversity and how that goes. So that's kind of just a little bit of an insight on, some of these bigger lines that you see in the UFC, that I try to stay away from and more so learn from fighters and how they react.
Yeah, and like you said, just to kind of to bring it home, betting MMA is different to betting any other sport because yeah, anything can happen in any sport, but like a minus 800 in a soccer game is like it's much more locked in, nailed in than a minus 800 in fighting because of the one punch, anything can happen capability. You can slip up, you can get injured. As a team game, yeah, I don't know. Betting MMA is just such a different game, and the minus 800s aren't always the minus 800s, if you know what I mean.
And even boxing for years, dude, the professionals would just walk in with a duffel bag full of money and bet Floyd Mayweather minus, 2,400 on the money line, get free money throughout their whole career. And that kind of counteracts like what I was talking about with Ronda Rousey. But you brought up the point of MMA being a different beast in boxing. It was like, Floyd picks the spots. He fought fighters who were past their prime. He kind of looked comfortable in every fight that he was in. And then at the end of the day, everybody who was in Vegas, that small money adds up, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks, $100 on, the plus 1,400 odds. So, the sharps are always going to lay the juice and take that money in certain situations. But MMA is completely different.
Yeah, exactly. Moving on, that was the co-main event. We are on the main event. Song Yadong, Ricky Simone. I'm really excited for this fight. Song Yadong, 19, 7-1, 5'8", 67-inch reach, 25 years old, 3-2 in his last 5. His last fight was a round 4 doctor stoppage loss to Corey Sandhagen. On the Simone side, he is 20 wins, 3 losses, 5'6", 69-inch reach, 30 years old, 5-0 in his last 5. His last fight was a round 2 submission win versus Jack Shore. I will let you kick this one off just because this seemed to be your strongest opinion on the card as we talked about it yesterday. So if you wanted to go ahead and take it away, go for it.
I will take it away. Song Yadong coming into this fight, he was tied going into the 5th round against Sandhagen. Sandhagen came out and put on one of the sharpest clinics in mixed martial arts in a long time against Vera. I can't believe that one of the judges scored it for Cheeto in that fight.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, and just the fighters that Ricky Simone has fought, they just don't do it for me. One of those being Brian Kelleher. His wins just aren't that impressive, and it's a low line and it's kind of confusing. It makes you think, but at the end of the day, I'm looking at the age and in the MMA skills, and I think Song's gonna come out. I think he's gonna finish him, and I'm very confident in Song. And it's a bigger unit play. I'm gonna go 4 units on this for me personally. So that's a decent wager for me. My biggest wager, we talked about this yesterday, was Taporia at 7.5 units, and then I wagered 5 units on Jones under 4.5 rounds, and that finished within 2 minutes. I really love this spot for Song, and my 4-unit wager is a little bit more because it's a great spot and it's minus 105. So in my opinion, I'm getting added value because of what I would risk on Juice, because I would play Song no matter what. So this isn't one where a line is going to scare me. This is one where I see a line that they made a mistake on, and I'm going to take advantage of it. And I encourage everybody to gamble responsible, but I am taking my stance on Song here. And yeah, I'll die on the hill. I'm pretty confident here.
I 100% agree with you. If you had just, before I'd seen lines for this, if you had showed me these 2 fighters and asked me to line it, I'm not going to lie, I would probably have Song around minus 180. But you said it perfectly. I feel like this is going to be with especially just the way people are talking about this fight on Twitter and stuff. I feel like this is going to be a y'all must have forgot performance. Like, there's levels to this game. Song is 25, and as good as he is, I feel like on the feet he is head and shoulders above Ricky Simone, and I think his takedown defense and grappling in general is going to be good enough to stuff some takedowns and keep throwing hands, or not be held down for long periods of time where it's losing him rounds. He may lose a round, maybe 2, but just the way he fights, how good he is, his skill set, he's going to be able to win at least 3 rounds, and I'd be super, super surprised if he didn't. You brought it up, Taporia. That's one of your biggest bets. That was also one of my biggest bets, and we both came to that conclusion separately and talked about it. I feel really confident when we kind of do that, and we're on the same side here. I feel Yadong is super undervalued here, and I love the play. I will also be playing him.
Yeah, and it's you said like it's one of those, you kind of forgot, like, oh my god, like, look at this, he's gonna come out and he's gonna, choose violence, in my opinion. And look at last week with Sergey, he was a dog and he just came on absolutely steamrolled Blades. So it's one of those things, and I wish I would have put money on Sergey, but I didn't. I just kept the fight because the line scared me. So sometimes, you got these guys. Sometimes it's best not to overthink it. If you know enough and you watch enough and you have enough of that data in your mind and you see something, sometimes just fire for it. And I'm firing on top tier talent, right? And we kind of talked about it when we talked about the Boudet and the Collier fight, um, in the Delima and Acosta fight. Like, those are risks. There's no reason to take a stance there. With the fighters like this, these are proven guys. Like, the Song went to war with Sandhagen, and he can take the punishment. The doctors had to stop it. He was busted up pretty bad, and like I said, Corey looked very good against Cheeto. Probably one of the best mixed martial arts performance I've seen in quite some time in terms of putting everything together with like the takedowns. He was moving his feet so well, and he's just one of the fighters who's fighting the best in the entire UFC right now. So that just even gives Song more stock, in my opinion.
Yeah, I didn't understand the. I mean, I knew some people are gonna bet Ricky Simone because of the wrestling upside and that kind of deal, but the amount of people that just seem to not look into that Sandhagen performance and what he can do, I don't know. It feels a little questionable to me.
That even goes back to what I talked about with Borrelio and how these odds makers place the line. So if you got a community, that reflects what they're gambling too, because you got a gambling community who's out there and they like Ricky Simone and they're not talking about Song Yudong enough. And sometimes that's an indication that they are putting this line out there because they know that people are going to bet Ricky and they want the Ricky money, so they're going to make it a little bit closer. Um, and I think Song Yudong, by the time this kicks off, I think he's going to be like minus 125 to minus 135 in that range.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised at all with that, to be honest. But yeah, we're both big on Song Yadong here. We really like him. Next up, normally we do our Savage Rounds parlay where it's I pick a leg and my co-host picks a leg. Dobie's not here today, so we're doing the Savage Rounds times Ludus Charta MMA parlay. Um, we both picked a line, and if you feel comfortable parlaying them together, go for it. We are 3-1 in our last four, um, trying to make it 4-1 in our last five. The two lines we've got for you today, how we talked about it, I don't see how you could be surprised. Song Yadong is in there. At the current odds, you can get him. It's minus 104 right now, depending on what book you're looking at. But just for this parlay's sake, it's minus 104. And then the other leg that I felt pretty confident in after we talked about it, and we both liked it a lot. That Braulio and Olajaychuk fight inside the distance. A fight ends inside the distance. Minus 200, and we talked about that. You could go for the under 2.5. But for parlay's sake, you might as well get that extra 2 minutes and 30 seconds of time with the minus 200, especially just it makes more sense for the parlay. You can get that parlay at plus 194. I personally will probably play a little bit on it just because I feel like there's a lot of good value for both of these plays, and especially together getting it at plus 194. I like that a lot. Did you have anything you wanted to say about the parlay before we get out of here, or just anything in general?
No, I just wanted to thank you for having me on. And, yeah, we had some audio problems, but we came back, run it again, fine tuned it. And I'm actually happy because this time on Discord, I have my screen recorded, and I know you're not going to do video for me, but once you post this, I'm going to take the screen record and just post it on my Twitter. and pin it. And then, as you know, I'm trying to reach the mountaintop of MMA coverage and journalism, and I want to get out there. I want to get on podcasts. I want to, eventually make it to the UFC and interview these guys. So thank you for this opportunity. And then when you post, I'm going to go ahead and post this whole thing on mine. So I just want to thank you for having me on, and I look forward to coming back on again.
Yes, sir. And next time we'll have your video set up and stuff. This was just a little last second. Plus we had the dumb audio issues. This was kind of rushed last second to get this back out. But yeah, it'll be better prepared next time for you. And yeah, I just wanted to say to you, thank you as well for having you on. Like I said, this was last second for you, and you offered to re-record this after the audio messed up. So I do really appreciate that. I'd love to have you back on some more. Um, and yeah, that's it. Savage Rounds episode 14. We'll see you guys later. Check Twitter for that giveaway though. Peace.